How's it going, guys? Back upstairs at my setup today and making a video I didn't think I'd be making on this making this early. So I was gonna make this video around the Deadlock Invitational that is coming up in August. Just got announced that Amelia Creeps is not going to be attending this event, but the event is still happening. So if you still want to support the event in terms of donations or sponsors, Ida will be running a subathon. He is rumored he'll be bringing a separate team that isn't Amelia Creeps. He's going to form a team to bring to the event, or he may just be at the event supporting. But he's still going to be doing a subathon to support the prize pool for this event. And if you are anyone who has interested in sponsorship money or opportunities on the more professional side of things, please reach out to Pierre. He's still looking for support for this event to get the prize pool going and things like that. But I thought I was going to maybe making the ABL video around this tournament because if EU teams did end up going, ABL would be a player who would most likely be playing at this event. But I completely forgot, because I've had my surgery and kind of been a little looser on the scene right now, that the R1 tournament actually started today. So the R1 tourney is going to be its second edition. It is a EU-ran event, mainly ran by more Russian side of things. So you can see there is the top end of the EU scene here. But the other teams involved are mainly like Russian rosters, like Rosoya, Oblivion. I would say like tier 2 EU scene, but again, doesn't really compete in a lot of the other major events that kind of go on, like Night Shift or DSIs. I think Oblivion has competed in DSI events before for EU. I don't know about Rosoya or anything like that. Sneaky Team is brand new to the scene, who will actually be playing in Night Shift today. Ended up beating Leviathan in the qualifier match, which was super interesting. But this event actually started today. Kind of funny that it started today. I feel like it actually kind of gets into the topic we're going to talk about today, which was a little bit of an FU towards Night Shift that they're starting their event today on obviously Wednesday is Night Shift's big day of the week. And so this event will be the return of ABL. For a lot of people who don't know, ABL was considered one of the top, if not best, EU pros in EU in 4-lane Deadlock meta. He was eventually banned from Night Shift for a clip I'm about to show you of him using the N-word on Metro stream. There was other allegations of like him using it in DMs and other like screenshots that got leaked. I can't like verify those as much, so I don't want to like push those out as like these are also what happened, but this is for sure one that is confirmed. Obviously it happened live on stream, so it's very hard to deny that it was him and that it happened. And I am going to play the clip in its entirety, so if you don't want to hear the N-word said, like, just skip ahead about like 10 seconds. I'll put a little like timestamp if you want to skip this, but I just want to not tell you what happened, kind of just not sugarcoat, kind of show you exactly what happened, right? So here's the clip.
Yo, that's newbie.
Shut up, nigga.
Yo, what? What the fuck?
Okay, so that's what happened. My headset wasn't on, so I actually didn't hear that. I've seen the clip before, though. So that's what happened, and the weird thing was nothing happened right at the beginning of this. So this happened about more than a year ago, and this thread comes out. People are very disappointed, for obvious reasons. But ABL actually continues to compete in Night Shift for quite a while. The last Night Shift he does end up competing in is Night Shift EU number 17. And for about, I think it was about 5 Night Shifts, might have been 3, I can't remember exactly. The chat is, anytime ABL is playing in a game, the chat is getting spammed with like, racist ABL wins again, racism wins again. Essentially just like constantly alluding to the fact that nothing is being done about the ABL situation. Like, people are very unhappy that this is in the scene and that people like this are allowed to participate in events like this. Again, Night Shift is a very cornerstone piece of the community right now. It's a weekly ran event. It's pretty much the only way you can showcase outside of big tournaments right now your talent and your team. And back then, like, tournaments were happening more frequently, but they didn't have the budget to market and promote them. So like Night Shift was really like the cornerstone of like the community and being able to show stuff. So this leads to fuck it, hopping on stream and giving a pretty insane take, which I'm gonna play for you now.
Boom.
All right, Chad, that was your last warning. The ban hammer's coming out. Fuck off. We don't need all the haters. We want the winners, and they're staying to the other side of the commercial break because we got game number 2. Jake's going to tell you why game 3 is coming. It starts with the draft. It's all fun and games here on the night shift. Quit being political, you douchebags. ABL, grow up. Stop using
Watch CP Space when they come back from commercial.
Welcome back to the night shift, everybody. I've been told by production that discussing whether or not racism is bad is good for engagements and helps with our sponsorships. If you're like us and agree that racism is bad, let's move on with the show as we get into game number 2. We got Jake, we got ZP on the mic. We've got 12 players playing for $600 plus any of the donations that come from the link below the stream. Jake, as the CFO, it's pretty awesome to see the community step.
So, as you can imagine, that did not go over well. People really did not like fucking saying that. The chat was roasting the fuck out of him, just absolutely laying into him. Into which Bucket actually takes a step back, does not cast on Night Shift for, I think, at least 5 weeks. Jake eventually has to put up a statement about the ABL situation, essentially saying on a personal level how disappointed he is, how Night Shift didn't want to say anything because they weren't prepared to make a statement. He does include ABL's apology here, which I will show you. ABL writes, I'm writing this sincerely apology for the incident when I used the N-word in game. I deeply regret it. My words were racist and offensive. I understand may have caused pain, discovering others, Very, like, I don't know if I really believe this guy. It's like, he's kind of just, this is very, like, copy-pasted. You could, like, ChatGPT this type of thing. Like, it doesn't feel very, very sincere. Jared goes on to say, additionally, was set at the time for ABL for any repeated offenses would be harsher punishment. Just treat banning as a last resort reserve. So essentially, he saying that behind the scenes, they gave him a warning, told him that if this behavior continued, you would not be welcome on Night Shift. And again, more sincere apologies, especially in the ages of LLM. So again, that people were making the accusation that this apology was a ChatGPT made, like he didn't even sincerely like write something out, didn't really care. Sadly, after last week's show, we've been aware of some very clear evidence. ABL has chosen to not take the strong community response as an opportunity to educate himself, take this instance sincerely whatsoever. This is what I talked about earlier with the leaked screenshots and saying things that were being sent around DMs and to other players in the community. Again, I can't verify those things, but apparently behind the scenes, Night Shift were able to verify these things and say, okay, this is like clearly he does not care. Generally speaking, we try to follow Valve's historical lead for ban policy, which is mainly based on competitive integrity, but effective immediately, we're issuing an indefinite ban on ABL's participation in Night Shift events. So that leads to his last major event being December 3rd of 2025. So this is the last time ABL has played in a tier 1 or top level event. And that has been the case. All these, the rest of you see here, these are like C tier, B tier events. These are more like Russian ran events where, again, like the political view on saying terrible things, racial things, in Eastern countries is not treated with the same vigor that we do in the West, right? Like they have a very different stance on those things. So this all leads to today, where the start of the RWEN Rio bet. If you don't know Rio bet, by the way, I had no idea what Rio bet was. I assumed it was just like a, another like gambling site. It is a online crypto gambling casino. So I didn't even click on the link. I was just like, okay, I guess that's what's getting the prize pool for this event, because I had no idea. But so that is where the 10K prize pool is coming from, is a online crypto casino. So it's just like, okay, and these are the teams competing, and as you can see on where are they? On Leviathan, ABL will be competing at this event. So this is ABL's first big event since December 3rd of 2025, and he is competing right now. This tournament has started. Again, a little bit of FU for R1 to be starting the event today. You could just view it as they want to get weekdays in and have their big final stuff on the weekend, but I do find it kind of ironic that they are starting it on Night Shift, right? Like that is kind of, if you're even slightly tapped into the scene, pretty funny to me, right? Especially because some of these teams are going to be competing in Night Shift today, and could cause complications, right? So that leaves us with the two lines of thinking on the ABL situation, right? ABL is a racist who should not be allowed in our scene. That behavior and language is vile and not welcomed, especially with his kind of behavior and rhetoric around it. It seems like he does not take his apology was very insincere. It seems like he's not changed at all in his behavior behind the scenes, behind the camera, and this guy shouldn't be allowed. Versus a much smaller minority of people saying this is a 20-year-old kid from Kazakhstan that genuinely cannot comprehend the weight and cultural impact of his words. It was an extremely stupid thing to say, but he served his time. Again, has not participated in the scene for over half a year now, and should be welcomed back into the scene on the condition that he's on extremely thin ice, right? Like if anything else happens, he should be again like banished from the scene. So those are kind of the two angles that people talked about with it. What I want to talk about is kind of a third angle that is more like a macro view of esports in general, because I think if you are in one of these two camps, I'm not going to convince you of anything, right? Like you're going to stay there and you're going to either see me as like a complete fucking bastard who doesn't understand the weight of these things and this is so fucked up, how can you not believe this? Or you're gonna see me as someone who like has empathy for a dumbass 20-year-old kid who has no idea of the weight of his words, right? But the angle I kind of want to talk about, and frankly I think is more interesting, is money in esports, right? So why is ABL allowed to come back in a Russian round event, right? Like why is that happening? Well, it's because if you follow esports in any kind of way, the money in esports over in 2025 has shifted dramatically in terms of prize pools, in terms of sponsorship, in terms of who are the mainstay events, who are throwing things that especially top level esports teams are willing to go to and are willing to consider, right? So the biggest being Saudi Esports is heavily invested in esports. This began in late 2024, mainly with the Esports Cup. So the Esports Cup represents pretty much every major competitive scene in esports that you can imagine. Apex, Dota, League, Valorant, Rainbow Six, Overwatch, Rocket League, Tekken. Every major competitive esport has an event ran at Esports World Cup. And why is it? Well, it's because the prize pools at these events are fucking insane. They will pay an immense amount of money to these teams. Even in more like established leagues like the Call of Duty League that has salaries, has sponsorship, has like some creator support from Blizzard Activision, also goes to these events because frankly the prize pools are just undeniable. Like if you are an esports org and you want to run a functioning business, you are going to consider Saudi money. It's just kind of what has happened in 2025. That is a reality of that's happening in esports right now. And then Saudi has kind of doubled down on their investment late 2025. They are building a lead global esports arena. So this is to support the Esports World Cup and also just have a epicenter of like, hey, if you want to run an event, we're going to have like the premier places to run an event. Typically, these events were ran either in EU or Asia. Asia has a lot of big esports arenas, particularly South Korea and China. I come from League of Legends. League of Legends is ran by Asia. In terms of viewership, in terms of top level talent, in terms of investment from sponsors, it is completely ran by Asia at this point. And Saudi is kind of trying to take an angle of they want to be a big player in this scene, right? They want to be someone you consider and someone, if you're going to throw major events, that, hey, they want to be a part of this, right? And this doesn't just include esports. Saudi has started investing in gaming companies too. They recently acquired, I forgot the name of them, it's in here, Moontoon Games for $6 billion. I believe they're the creators of Cuphead, if I'm not mistaken. So not just on the esports side of things, but Saudi has also started to invest into game creation and studios and publishers, which is them kind of, again, trying to take like a whole grasp on the industry, right? They don't just want to be on the competitive side of things now. They want to be more involved in actually like the creation and distribution of games. So that is happening. So it also begs the question of, okay, is there any clean money in esports anymore? Is there anyone who has like moral standing in esports, or are we literally just going to start taking money from anywhere, right? And there are some teams that still do that. A lot of them are legacy esports institutions. So these are people that have been around since the very early days of League of Legends, very early days of Counter-Strike. And frankly, there are these esports brands that have kind of been forged through the fire, right? Like they had their predecessors, they're on the same level as them at the start of things, and they kind of fell by the wayside once Venture capital left the scene once it just became a tighter ship, and you had to really have business acumen to be able to run these organizations. So I'm going to go through a couple of those. This is Team Liquid, formerly known as Team Curse. They have Alienware, Blacklight, Dual Bits, Hypersolid, IMC, Monster Energy, SAP, Visa, right? Like Xena. So like a couple like smaller brands, but really huge brands here, right? Like Visa, Monster, like these are mainstream huge brands that still support Team Liquid. Cloud9, JetBrains is more like a software company, but they are still supported by Kia. Kia is a huge one. Pay attention to how many car companies are still sponsoring big esports orgs, by the way. It's something I'm going to talk about later. Republic of Gamers, so Cloud9 a little bit smaller, but still has like very commuted partners. Mueller Medicine, Pagodia, Secret Labs, Tempo, and then Xena again. Zena, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Fnatic's infamous for not really taking care of their players, but in terms of business side, Fnatic has been very, very successful in terms of acquiring partners, right? AMD, BMW, another car company, Hisense, Litau, Felix, Lavazaya, I'm mispronouncing a lot of these, Monster, OnePlus, Nike, right? Virgin Media, Bud Light, like these are huge companies, right, that are supporting Fnatic. And I would say the cornerstone of any esports team in terms of sponsorships is G2. So G2, these are their main presenting sponsors, but G2 has done like insane sponsorships with like designer brands like Louis Vuitton, with there's more, but I'm just forgetting that G2 is very good at getting doing big like promotional stuff with big brands. So these are like the presenting sponsors, but G2 also gets these like huge deals with brands that just want to do like a launch, or they want to do like a line with G2 with their merch or something like that, right? G2 is, I would say, the epitome of a esports org that really understood like, hey, you guys don't have to invest long term in us. We'll just partner with you for like a launch of something. And I think that's a big part of G2 success in terms of this. But even with that said, they still get companies like Logitech, McDonald's, Red Bull, which we're going to do a huge deep dive on in a second here, ExpressVPN, Herman Miller Gaming, Ralph Lauren was the other designer one I wasn't thinking of, Winamax, ESL Faceit Group, Bet Panda, right? So when you look at these partners, there are still investment coming into esports from large entities and like brands, but it has become very feast or famine. These are 4 orgs that have been around for over a decade plus now, almost, for some of these 2 decades, right? And why they are able to work with these brands is because they're very, very established, and these brands feel much more comfortable investing in these companies because they have proven that they can get return on investment. They can hit a much larger base than most esports organizations, and frankly just have like the business acumen. Like they've been around. They feel confident in investing with these people, right? One of the bigger investors that you saw on a couple teams here was Red Bull as well, by the way. Red Bull has made a huge move into esports recently. They sponsor events. They sponsor now the Red Bull athletes have now extended to gamers like Emaru, SFand, a lot of people who are just like gaming adjacent, not even like competitive gamers, have now started to work with Red Bull. And I think from a marketing and business perspective, it actually makes a ton of sense. Like when you think about in the year 2026, like who is going to be drinking energy drinks? Who's going to be like, when we're in such like a health conscious society now, right? Like people really are kind of like taking a different perspective on taking care of themselves. Who's going to be willing to drink energy drinks, right? It's going to be high performers, so people who do the risk management, not risk management, like, is it worth the risk to drink an energy drink for performance? And people who are degenerates and don't care at all about their health, right? And what's the Venn diagram overlap of that? It's esports, right? It's like high performers who are just trying to be the best they can be and push themselves, and also are like giga degenerates, don't have good sleep schedules, eat terribly, right? Like I feel like it's a very like natural overlap for Red Bull. So I think them moving into the space makes a lot of sense. Monster was someone who was always also into like esports stuff. They were very big supporters of like MLG in the past, which again like is another huge early esports deep dive, but we'll leave that topic for another day. So, and as you can see, there is still investment, right? There is still people who are willing to invest in esports despite there being not a lot of return in the more traditional sense, right? Like gamers typically don't buy products. Gamers typically don't spend a lot of money at all, like advertising money. As someone who's getting into the YouTube space, something I was very aware of is like, even when you get monetization on a YouTube channel that does gaming stuff, your CPM, so the amount of revenue you get per view, is much lower with gamers and gaming content, anything like that, where the high end is like finance or like investment stuff or health centric products, right? Like those people make much more money per view, I think it's like per 100, per 1,000 views, than someone who does gaming, because frankly, the people watching and engaging with the content are way more likely to like buy products and like actually click on an ad that they're being served, right? So this is kind of what's happening. The other thing before we move it on, I forgot to talk about, was car brands are a huge part of these big sponsors. If you've been following like kind of the economic world of cars right now, it is in the shitter. So car brands across the board are hitting historical lows in terms of sales and gross revenue. So there is a very high chance that companies like BMW and Kia move away from esports in terms of the investment and money they're going to be putting towards this. I would not be surprised if that happens by like Q2, Q3 of this year. Like it is just hitting this point where we are just a base of people. Like there are very few gamers that can afford a BMW. Like there are very few people that this ad makes sense to serve to, right? So that's kind of where we're at, right? So there is still some money with mainstream brands, big brands that can support the scene. Typically we'll only support the higher end of esports and esports brands. And then the more accessible money that is available for a lot more people is like the Saudi investment side of things, right? Like, or gambling. Gambling's the other huge one that isn't really in the slide, right? Rio Bet with the R1 tournament is a great example. So there's kind of these two routes we could go, where we either have just like very few esports brands that can take more morally conscious money, and then though we kind of just have those core esports teams that kind of support multiple games. They like CS2, League of Legends, Apex, Overwatch, you name it, right? And they're kind of like, you support one esports brand into multiple games, or teams that are up and coming and want to establish themselves in the scene are going to have to rely on things like Saudi investment, right? And now that's a broader topic about esports. But when we talk about Deadlock, we actually do have like a third avenue, right? Because we have Lord Gaben. So Lord Gaben recently just purchased a $70 million home in Florida that has a dock bay for his 2 yachts. And Gabe is someone who is very willing to, I think more importantly, not just invest in esports and their games and their communities, but he's very smart business acumen where he creates avenues for his scenes and his communities to develop money on their own, right? Like if you've played any Valve titles before with like TF2 or CSGO, there is like love or hate loot boxes. They generate an immense amount of income for those scenes, right? And for Valve in general, which Valve can then in turn invest back into the game. Or even just like crowdfunding events like the International and Dota, is the prize pool is completely supported by cosmetic purchases from the community, right? And it directly goes into prize pools that again will support the scene and in turn like kind of reinvest into the community, right? Like the peak of TI was a $40 million prize pool in 2021, right? That was crowdfunded. That's from buying like brand items in game to support teams, to support leagues, players, right? So what Valve is very good at is giving you as an esports pro, or giving you as a content creator in these spaces, a way of generating revenue that is detached from social media, that is detached from a salary from either like people who are covering esports or the brands themselves, right? Like a lot of people who wanted to make money in esports for League of Legends, you had to work with Riot, right? Like you had to be on the Riot broadcast, you had to kind of like bend the knee in that sense. and you were going to be underpaid, you were going to be undervalued. Obviously, a lot of this has changed with like co-streaming and things like I'm doing here, where I can have my own platform. I can talk about the things, the ideas I think, the ideas I have, and the ways I think. And this is a very reliable way for us to generate revenue, where we don't have to rely on these two more traditional avenues, right? But for the first time in Valve's history, I would say this may be coming under fire. If you have not been following the news, Valve is being sued in multiple class action lawsuits by multiple different entities right now. One being the New York State is pursuing them on loot boxes, considering it as gambling. And there's some other ones. They're getting pursued that Steam is like a monopoly. They're being sued for forcing prices, including with Microsoft, to make sure you as a gamer can't get better prices elsewhere outside of Steam. A lot of these are, I'm going to be honest, kind of like blood in the water lawsuits where Valve is under attack. So when a company like Valve, which only has so many resources to put towards their legal team, you can kind of just jump in, blood in the water, and just attack that legal team and really push them to their limits, because you understand other people are attacking them right now, and you can kind of maybe scouge your way in to just get away with, like, you know, a couple tens of millions of dollars through a lawsuit, right? So why I bring this up is this might be the first time in Steam or Valve's history that they might not want to be as focused on revenue generating for other people. They may not want to be as forthcoming with like dishing out money for a TI or for events for Deadlock and stuff like this, right? And this is again, like the first time this could ever happen in the company's history. Ever since they developed loot boxes and Steam as a platform, they have been lush in cash, right? Like per employee, they were by far and away like the most genuine revenue generators, like per employee of any company in like the Fortune 500. They're a Fortune 500 company, but they're privately held. But it's just something to think about when we think about this stuff. So this video to some people may seem like a tangent on a tangent on a tangent, but I really do think all these things are connected, right? Now that venture capitalists left esports because we didn't hit like the high highs that traditional sports viewership and conversion sales on that viewership accompany with the viewership, but we still have a very stable and committed viewer base, right? Which begs the question of how do we navigate the business side of esports in a way that is sustainable instead of relying on having big booming games like we're all expecting Deadlock to be, and relying on sponsorship money and investment into the scene when our title eventually blows up, and kind of accepting money and investment from people that don't really understand our community or don't understand our scene, right? They're just looking at it as like a payday. And it very well may start with having players and established figures in the scene that companies want to work with, that they don't get fucking absolutely destroyed and fucked over with like a couple months of being invested in our scene. You know, something I forgot to talk about was, you know, one of the biggest sponsors for Team Liquid was Honda for a long time. Honda was like their presenting sponsor. It was a huge pull for Team Liquid to get us. And then this R6 player named Lucas, after they lost to a Japanese team at an international event, made a Hiroshima joke to which Team Liquid obviously booted him off the team. I'm laughing at the absurdity of it, by the way. Like have some, just think, bro, just think, right? And eventually Honda stepped away from Team Liquid because they were just like, how are we going to support you guys when like you have players that are like making jokes about the biggest tragedy that ever happened to our nation, Honda being a Japanese company, right? So I think we have to keep relying on new faces to support our scene, because we can't hang on to sponsors to begin with, because the ones who stick around and the ones who are committed to the scene eventually just kind of get screwed over by like the PR side of supporting esports, right? Supporting esports, you're supporting these young dudes who are just not very well thought out in like how they manage their public persona and the things they say on a live stream and stuff like that, right? But I wanted to bring up the other angle of the Gabe Newell side of things, because we really could go down a route where we just do Valve sponsored events or events that kind of hold that moral threshold that like Valve can uphold, where they don't have to take money from Saudi, they don't have to take money from gambling, And we could just have a scene where we support those things. I think the reality is, again, you could do that if you're a very top level team and you're going to get those big prize pools. You're going to be winning these events. But I think all in all, these other events like R1 are a good example of like the lower end teams or teams that aren't going to be getting big sponsors, aren't going to be winning the top events. They kind of rely on these other events that even if you morally don't support where that money is coming from, they're going to be the reason that their team and their organization can exist through winning these events and being able to, just exist, frankly. So yeah, this may seem like a tangent on tangent video, but I really do think all these ideas and concepts are connected. Money is very connected to the personality side of what you're supporting, right? PR plays a huge role in brands. And if brands are going to invest in what we do and in our scenes, a big part of it is tied to the personalities and the people that are in the scene, obviously. So that's all I want to talk about today. I probably will be live streaming the games today. I have found up a setup so I can put my leg up and kind of like chill out. And so I feel pretty comfortable on my PC. But for the 12% of you that actually watch to the very end of the videos, I very much appreciate you. I should be back to just making a video at my desktop once a week. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys at the games. Peace.